All right, everyone. Here we are at FUTO. We're here with Harpo, engineer Harpo, and Hannes, who you've never seen before. He's another engineer here at FUTO. First, let's just kind of, Hannes, why don't you kind of tell us about a little bit of like interesting things you've done that you can tell us about in your background as a security researcher for, cell phones, basically, right?
Yeah, so I've been hacking phones for a few years, finding vulnerabilities in your average flagship phone, and I don't know, I can't probably share many details about it, but I do understand like how security works, all of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, so this is, a lot of the problems we have with FUTO, the big tech will say, well, we have to do these things to keep things secure, right? So, they'll implement these policies. You deal with it on cell phones with code signing. This kind of really causes a problem when you buy we're recommending people do de-Googled Android here on their cell phone. It's actually hard to do that with a lot of phones because a lot of phones are just completely locked. You can't install Calyx OS or Graphene OS on them. So we'll talk about a few things in this area today. Let's talk about the hardware part first, though. Like how do you kind of how bad is it getting in terms of like us being able to, like, is there going to be a time where we will not even have the capability to install our own operating system on like a $300 phone that we get at Best Buy?
Yeah, I mean, I see it as that we're heading there already, and like on many of the modern phones, you can install whatever you want on it, but like the phone will refuse to boot because the first boot stage on the phone will just say, "Hey, this isn't from the manufacturer." So, and there's not really any drawbacks for the manufacturer for doing this. So, I don't see why any of the manufacturer would not do it unless something happens with people voting with the wallets, refusing to buy lockdown phones, or whatever else.
Yeah, I mean, there might be regulation, that's smart regulation, maybe, I don't know. This has kind of been a bad progression ever since the smartphones kind of came out with the iPhone, where, at first we couldn't get our code in the app stores without, getting Apple's approval, and then we figured out how to jailbreak iPhones, and so then we could get stuff onto our iPhones and get our own apps onto the phone outside of the App Store. But now it's almost impossible to. It's getting harder and harder to even jailbreak an iPhone. And Google has always been pretty good on this, but they might get worse too, in terms of they let you sideload.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like historically, you go like hardware DRM. And, when it comes to, playing a DVD or what have you, or, a game console, like the security level that those older pieces of hardware had were just like very, very, very low. And a lot of times the reverse engineering, while still impressive, the techniques were also like pretty clear. Like, the RAM is off chip, to the CPU, and you can just like sniff the bus or something. And once you have that, you can just do whatever you want. Stuff like that, or you could demask the chip because it was 100 nanometers, for the feature size. And these days, a lot of times the modern manufacturers are a lot more intelligent about these things. So the obvious low-hanging fruit are kind of gone. Like you look at the modern game consoles, and they have all the access to the RAM is encrypted. If you try to demask the chip, there's like multiple levels of key derivation that you can't even extract. There's not even a single key to necessarily extract. And then you're dealing with feature sizes. Like the modern chips are a few nanometers. Like even if you have like some fairly sophisticated equipment, it's going to be very, very difficult to actually inspect something that small. Whereas before, like with the naked eye, you could almost see some of the features on these chips.
It's funny that you mentioned the RAM encryption and everything else. Actually, it's pretty much even worse than that, because even on the iPhones, the latest iPhones, they actually even sign each block of memory.
Yeah, nice. I mean, if I was to implement a system, that's how I would make sure to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, so they're doing these things for a few reasons, right? One reason is to make, to have more control over the system. The more they can control the way you use the phone, kind of the more they can profit in various ways. Obviously, with with game consoles, it was always the case where they would take big fees from game developers to even be able to publish a game on the game console. We see this with stores where they take the App Store, they take 30%. So that's we don't like that. The nice thing they do provide though is it's a much more secure environment, right? Like when you have these lockdown pieces of hardware, you don't have to worry as much about a malicious program can take over your phone very easily if you don't have some of these security features.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they're there. But I guess what I would say is, can't you have it both ways though? Can't you have the security features and have freedom to control you as a consumer? We want the security features, but we don't want the company to be completely in control of our computer. So how can you make that happen?
Well, in my opinion, for one, you could. I'm not talking about specific implementations here, but if there was a way for the user to control the code signing keys, you could have all of the security benefits from code signing, while having at least not most of the drawbacks. Of course, there's going to be security issues probably with the specific implementation, but in my opinion, the benefits clearly outweigh the drawbacks in that case.
Yeah, so you're talking about it. We were just talking about a system where the code sign, like typically the way they want the phone to work is, Apple engineers at Apple work very hard on iOS version whatever. Then they sign it cryptographically, and then because they know the keys that are on all the phones, so they can sign the new operating system it gets on the phone. You were talking about a system where those keys would be something that the consumer would be, the person who owns the phone could have more control over.
So you would download the software from Apple, you would sign it yourself using your key, and then put it on your phone instead.
Okay, and that way you can make sure that like Apple's not doing like you would download. It could be open source even in that case. You could build it yourself.
You could download any piece of
right.
software firmware or whatever and put it on your phone.
And when the de-Googled Android situation, that makes a lot more sense too.
And you could even like download the stuff from Apple, verify the signature yourself, verify that it comes from Apple, put it on your phone, and just sign it yourself after checking their signature. And you could decide yourself what versions are appropriate. If you all of a sudden stop trusting a company, you could no longer accept that signature yourself.
Yeah, so if all these companies have signing keys that are hopefully locked down, but sometimes they leak, and so I guess in this scenario, if one of those keys leaked, your key didn't leak, hopefully. So even though like there's some backdoor that's in the system now that someone finds, or they can flash a new version of the system with an exploit built in, that still can't infect your phone.
Yeah, if someone gets their hands on Apple's keys, no one wants to trust that key anymore, and so neither should you.
So I mean, this kind of stuff to me is fairly plausible to do and not that hard to do. Apple doesn't really have an incentive to do it. I think Google has been a little bit nicer, but I don't think even they'll do this. But when they tell us that, well, we have to do things this way, we have to control your life digitally because that's the only way you're not going to get hacked. That's the only way you're not going to get abused by some Nigerian print scam or like whatever. I don't know, whatever vectors of attack there are on you. I think that's a lie. That's just a complete lie. They could build it this way if they wanted to, and it's not like we're like asking for a lot, from them. It's more like they just need to put a little R&D into this to make sure it's in their chips.
I mean, as I understand, if you look at like x86 desktop secure boot, like you can use your own keys and sign your own system. Like if you have some custom Linux kernel or something that you've modified and you want to sign that, you can put your own keys in the hardware. And like I remember when secure boot was first being rolled out on laptops and desktops, people were really worried that they were just going to say like, oh, you have to use our key, the Microsoft key. And luckily that didn't happen, but it very easily could have. That was the only option. And I don't even know. Like I don't know if all hardware supports using your own key or not. I just know
that's the thing, right? Just as in the Google case, you're at the mercy of the manufacturer to decide that hey, this platform is allowed to be unlocked. There's nothing that like guarantees it. Like you may buy a motherboard tomorrow and
once the infrastructure is there, it's like, it's one bool probably to decide if.
I mean,
if you're allowed to or not, if they want to change their mind.
I haven't looked at secure boot specifically, but I assume it's just something simple that switches between the user key and the Microsoft hard-coded key in the ROM.
Yeah, and like if they want to give you that ability or not, it's like the most trivial change for them.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
FUTO, we're doing whatever we can to kind of push things in the right direction, give people control over their computers. I don't know. Is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of secure hardware? Like,
I don't know. I'll say there's this one kind of other side to secure hardware that I think is really interesting. So, I mean, the reason I think that most companies are kind of pushing this stuff is not only for hardware, if your device gets stolen, if they can extract all your data or something, but it's also like probably for DRM purposes, to ensure that like, oh, people are, if you're using like the Uber app or something, that you're not spoofing your location, which some drivers are known to do. They'll say like, oh, I'm at the airport, even though they're not. They're a few minutes away. I think that was happening there for a bit. But this technology can also like be empowering to consumers for hardware that they don't control, which I think is a super interesting case. As of the last few years, if you look at kind of modern server chips with either Intel Secure Enclaves or the AMD Secure Encrypted Virtualization, you can like pay a cloud provider, and so long as the hardware company is not screwing you over, you can you as a user self-hosting something or paying someone to host something in the cloud, you can trust that virtual machine or that enclave code is actually doing what it, the code that you think is running actually is, and the cloud company can't like, if you're hosting a server or something, the company can't see your memory or what you're doing. Like the only thing they can see is encrypted traffic coming in and out. And that, like being able to pay for some AWS server and like have it know that like this AWS is definitely not able to spy on me. They're definitely not able to look, like if I have some proprietary secret code or something, I want to upload it, like they can't get it. And that's really cool. Like if you look at like an app like Signal, for their contact discovery mechanism, they actually use this feature where instead of the usual case where like the phone is proving to Netflix that it's a valid device, instead the phone is asking the servers on Amazon or wherever they're hosted, is the code that Signal says is running there actually running there? And it's like the trust space of that is just massively reduced, which is that's kind of like a positive use case of this technology.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways.
I also find it interesting if you're a larger and or more sensitive organization, you don't want to trust Apple, for example, with all of the data on your phones, your computers, everything. Because with code signing, you're basically giving the manufacturer the permission to install whatever they want with whatever permissions they want on your device. So there's nothing stopping you, technically, from them just installing a keylogger or sending all your files to their servers or whatever.
Yeah. Or in the case of like even more like for cloud providers especially, like so many huge businesses now are totally dependent, like everything, all their customer data, all their corporate secrets are all on AWS somewhere. And like these companies, these server providers, they have some policies about who's able to access this data, but there's a bunch of engineers at these companies who can see everything that they're doing if they really wanted to.
Yeah, definitely.
And like, it makes me very nervous knowing that half of corporate America has all of our secret, like all of their secret and customer data and corporate secrets and code and stuff, just like totally at the behest of one company.
Yeah.
And like if that breaks, like that's just.
If you have contacts at like each of the big companies, you can basically get almost any data you want in the world.
Yeah, which is some of that stuff. Like is even more. If I were to think of like one benefit of this stuff, like that area seems way more beneficial than like ultimately at the end of the day, like if my laptop gets stolen, like I have full disk encryption on it that has nothing to do with the hardware. Like even if it does get stolen, like I'm not really worried about the evil maid as much as all my data on the cloud or something.
I mean, this is a double-edged sword, though, right? I mean, the exact same technology lets them have the kind of control that we want on the server, right? They can have that kind of control on our phones with the exact same technology.
Yeah, so. And most companies are not going to be like Signal, where they're validating that the server code is doing what it says it does. Most companies are going to be, oh no, your airlines app,
Yeah.
they're gonna reverse the direction.
So that kind of gets us a little bit into this kind of, people have been talking about this lately, the web integrity API stuff that Google's been pushing, which is, basically what this is, Google wants to kind of inside the browser detect whether or not you're a robot or not, and like tell this to websites so that the websites can like, this is why they say they want it. There's like the websites want to be able to kind of do anti-bot filtering using this technology, but it has some very negative repercussions if it gets implemented. Either way, you want to talk about that, Harpo?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have perfect familiarity with the proposed standard, but it sounds to me like they basically want the standard DRM stuff, but potentially for every website, like Widevine, as when you watch Netflix on Linux, for example. Maybe you don't get the 4K stream option.
You don't.
Yeah.
480p at best.
Yeah. And it's very easy to imagine a future where Chrome goes. I mean, Chrome does have the market share. Like, I'm not sure if the standard's going to go through, but almost everyone, at least in the United States, is using Chrome. I am a Firefox user, but there's not a lot of us. And if major websites like YouTube and Netflix start requiring it, I think there's a very decent chance that people are just going to switch to Chrome and be like, sorry, I need YouTube.
Yeah. And so when you're talking about web integrity APIs, that can also mean, are you adding an ad blocker? They can try to figure out things like that about what you're doing on your own computer, and then denying you the information you're asking for just because they decided you're not looking at it the right way. Yeah. So this is definitely not something we want to have happen at FUTO.
I definitely see YouTube locking the higher video quality options behind that kind of a lock. I could see, like, after Reddit shutting down their API, they probably would be at least a little bit interested in it.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe
Twitter would probably be using this already.
Twitter too, yeah.
They would have enabled this.
It also makes it impossible for anybody, well, not impossible, but very difficult for anybody else to start competing with Google, or like there'll probably be a few companies that website starts trusting to filter bots or whatever. So most of the web will stop working if you're using a niche browser.
There will be no independent browsers if websites start adopting that.
Yeah, I mean, every alternative, or almost every alternative browser that already exists is like a fork of Chromium or some modification of Firefox. And like writing a browser is already a Herculean task. There's a couple out there that actually are starting to get standards compliance that are truly out of truly from scratch. But once if one of these standards goes through, like the chance of one of those alternative browsers actually making it is just so low.
And that's kind of, Chromium is open source from Google. If Google built this, probably the parts of your Chrome browser that are doing this, they were not going to open source. They're going to want that running in the kind of the trusted, their own little, what's it called? The thing on the servers that runs your software.
Enclave.
The Enclave, yeah. They're going to want to run that on the Enclave to make sure you're not a bot. And that's going to be closed source software. So it could go that way.
I mean, Chrome is already closed source. It's Chromium that's open source.
It's it's a little hard for me to predict, but like if you look at modern Intel CPUs, like a lot of times they'll have an enclave on them. Phones usually have these enclaves. The code for interacting with that could still all be fully open source. Even the code in the enclave could be open source. It's just the provider. Like I'm not convinced it would be proprietary. Like it's just the websites would say only these versions of enclave code are allowed to run or something. Like, and like they could prove even if the code's open source.
And these enclaves are going to be doing all sorts of things, like measuring how much you're using, moving the mouse or whatever, to try to like make sure you're doing things in the proper way, as a proper consumer would.
Yeah, like
Chrome.
maybe the mice. And this is like future hard to predict land, but you could see like peripherals starting to get. Also getting DRM. iPhones kind of have this where like the different input interfaces have some security mechanisms associated with them. It's imagine you could see like, oh, like the connection from like my mouse to my desktop is encrypted or something, or my microphone or what have you. And then at that point, like, we already have this like for screens where there's like the HDMI.
HDCP.
Yeah, and they've been like, oh, you can only play this, you can't plug your graphics card into a capture card to actually copy a video. It's just like it'll only play on that screen, and like this technology already exists. It's just not.
Luckily, it hasn't. Luckily, it's not as bad as it could be. Like they're trying to do a lot of this stuff, and most people using HDMI aren't using this yet. But like it's there in a lot of the stuff we're using, and they can kind of start adopting it more as more TVs out there get into the situation. Yeah, so anyway, I don't know. Sucks.
That's true. I agree about that.
I mean, the point I really want to hammer home is whenever big tech says that, oh, we have to do this because of security or piracy or whatever, it's bullshit. They really are. They've totally abused any kind of trust that they should have in those manners. Like they really are just trying to control us and take advantage of us. And it's not hard for them. It would not be hard for them to kind of implement, like what you said, with like having the consumer, the owner of the device provide the key for the code signing and things like that. It's not hard for them to give us products that are secure and pirates, and we can protect ourselves from bad actors on the internet, but they don't have to control our lives at the same time. That's a false dichotomy that they create.
Yeah, they picked a solution that solved all the problems, but they also created a lot of new problems for the consumer, which we did not have before. They just happened to choose the solution that does not respect your freedom.
Thanks, everybody. We're working on solving these problems. Check out our website. We're looking for people to help us do these things. We would actually love to get involved creating some of this hardware, even if we can find the right kind of people to do it. It's very expensive, but we think it would be cool to have some of these things exist as computers that can run Calyx OS or Graphene OS and actually have some of these signing features too. It just kind of needs people to work on them, smart people. As always, if you do not master your computer will become your master.
Nice.